Let's open up the Black Series Archive 6-inch Lando Calrissian Skiff Guard figure. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. It's the new year 2025 and one of my New Year's resolutions is to be better when it comes to opening up my Star Wars figures. Too often when I pick up a new figure, whether it's from the vintage collection or the larger Black Series 6-inch scale, I bring them home all excited and then I stash them away, planning to eventually find a proper home for them. But too long do they just get a little bit forgotten, stored away, and I never seem to get around to opening them up and adding them to my display. So this year I really want to improve on that. Some time ago I picked up quite a few of the Black Series Archive reissued figures when they showed up on clearance locally here in New Zealand, and unfortunately they've been in their boxes ever since and I really want to change that. So I picked one out. We're starting off with Lando Calrissian in his really cool Skiff Guard disguise from Return of the Jedi. There are some really cool details on this figure. Definitely look forward to opening up this one. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll open up the figure. We'll check out all of the details and articulation. But first, let's take a quick look at the packaging. The packaging for the Black Series Archive line consists of a rectangular cardboard backing card and a nice rectangular clear plastic bubble on the front. In keeping with the Black Series theme, we have a lot of black in the color scheme here across the top and down that left side with some gray accents as well. We've got to the Black Series logo here at the top, a little bit obscured by a price sticker that refused to come off. We've got a cutout for the top hanger and also a cutout along that left edge, which is mirrored by a little bit of an angular cutoff to the clear bubble on the front. We've got nice clear readable text down the left side for the character name, Lando Calrissian in brackets Skiff Guard, and we've got a nice light grey panel behind the figure that really lets us see some of those details. Wouldn't work quite as well if that was a fully black behind the figure as well. That light grey colour extends along the right edge where we can see the text Archive, of course the name for this particular line. We've got a little bit of a cardboard insert in that front bubble there with some black and white art of Lando from Return of the Jedi in his disguise, and we can see his accessories there. They are not hidden in behind that insert card, so if you do want to keep yours carded, you're not hiding anything important there. You can see all of the accessories packaged there are visible, which is nice. Moving on to the back, we've got again that same artwork, a bit larger this time and a little bit more cropped in to show some details, and we've got some nice clear information about the original version of this figure, because of course the Archive line are reissued. These are figures that were available previously, sometimes soon, sometimes quite a bit in the past. So it's a nice way for recent collectors to pick up figures that they might have missed out on. As you can see, the original Lando Skiff Guard figure was released in that red and black box era, 2018. We do have a character blurb here, which I'll quickly read. Lando Calrissian changed from a schemer to a leader in the fight against the Empire. When Han was captive in Jabba's palace, he joined Princess Leia in a rescue mission. And that is repeated a few times in different languages. I do think it's interesting on the back of these archive cards, they do have an asterisk next to the image of the older figure because they note that it is not available. Of course, this is a much older figure, and that is why they have reissued it here to give collectors a second chance. We do have some very minimal copyright and barcode text across the bottom of here because of course we do also have a little bit along the bottom of the bubble there as well, but I do like that nod to the original version there with that information there on the back, nice and easy to see. Overall, I really like the presentation for the Archive line, but here in New Zealand I just seem to have bad luck with trying to find one with a really nice backing card to it. I guess by the time I find them, they've got a bit of shelf wear, they've got stickers that won't come off. So for me personally, I love this line for opening them up. And I gotta say, because I'm quite nostalgic about this side art of the boxes for the Black Series line, those are the ones that I do tend to keep boxed if I am keeping a figure mint in its packaging. So with all of that being said, it looks nice, but as you can see, this card is not for keeping. It's got a lot of mess up here with that sticker that wouldn't come off. So I'm really excited to open this one up. So let's get stuck in. So now I have the Lando figure and his accessories out of the packaging so we can take a closer look. So one thing that I'm always excited to see when I get figures out of their packaging is how well they stand up, and I didn't need to tweak this one at all. He's very sturdy, got nice flat boots there, his ankles are strong, and he's got a good stance, which bodes well for how well I'm going to be able to pose him with his accessories and not worrying about tipping over later. The other thing that I really wanted to see about this figure in particular was the metallic finish on his armor. It's quite unique for a Star Wars character, this really cool sort of hammered metal finish with his chest plate, shoulder pieces, and a gauntlet there as well. Some really nice paintwork there. So of course the archive line are straight reissues of older figures. They don't really change them. Sometimes we might get a little bit more of an updated photorealistic face app there, but as you can see, we do have the older style of knee articulation there, where we have sort of the two pegs with that separate kneecap. So this is a style of articulation for lower limbs that I'm not so much of a fan of. I do like the more modern style, which fits a little bit more closer to the articulation that we see in like the vintage collection, the 3.75, where it's just sort of the thigh into the lower leg rather than these sort of 2 points here. I know we do get a lot of range of motion with this type of articulation, but with so many different components and small pieces, it cuts through a lot of detail. But I've got to say, for this particular figure, because he's wearing mostly plain pants with just a bit of sort of gathering and bunching as his pants are tucked into his boots, it's not cutting through quite as much detail. And of course, with this pale color, the peg, particularly on the upper part here, is kind of almost disappearing into it. The one patch where it is kind of cutting in is here, where it is unfortunately cutting right through that strap detail. So we just get that pale color peg where that strap detail should really be continuing. We can see that on the inner leg there as well. So there's just that one sort of component there, but from the front, we don't notice that quite as much. But yes, of course, I do wish this figure had the more modern style of articulation, but it's not actually bothering my eyes quite as much as I thought it might now that I've got him out, because of course he's got a lot of strong detail here. Really draws the eye up away from the knees there. So let's go through the paint and the sculpting details before we move on to full articulation. So of course we have Lando here as we see him in Return of the Jedi, and I have to say this is a really good likeness of Billy D. I say it in a lot of my reviews that if I feel like I can hear the character voice lines, if I can sort of imagine the voice, it sort of really sort of it feels like it captures the character really well. And I can hear the smooth voices coming through from this one, those voice lines. It's just a really good likeness. Just fantastic sculpting and really good paintwork on the face there as well. Of course, we've got the eyebrows, those nicely painted eyes. And of course, he's a rare character with facial hair in the original trilogy. He's got a mustache, which is painted really nicely. Just a little bit of sculpting, so it is just a little bit raised, not just painted there, which is nice to see. And of course, his hair being a little bit shorter is sculpted as part of the head. We've got some really nice wavy hair sculpting there. So let's just check out the printing along the hairline. That is looking really good. We don't have any kind of paint mishaps along the hairline because it's not separate. Sometimes we get a nice clean line where it's two pieces glued together, but this one is all one piece. So we want a really tidy painted hairline, and we do have it there. Very nice. And I can already see he is very easy to articulate there, which is really good. Going to have a lot of fun testing out the posing once we get his accessories on there as well. So moving on to his costume, he's got a number of sort of leather sort of tunic and sort of sections here with some really nice paintwork. We'll start with the chest here. We've got sort of a vertical lines here on his undershirt, his vest here, with this hammered metal sort of chest plate here held on with straps that go across the back. You can see the striping detail there of his vest and those straps. We've got a nice sort of creasing of the leather sculpted in there, which is really fun. You can see just those sort of little lines in there, looking like creases in leather straps. We've got a couple of little rivets there. No paint accessory sort of dots there on those rivets. They are raised. That's quite nice. And we've got that strap going across the back, holding on to the shoulder plates there. Really like the detail there on those shoulder plates there. Got the little bumps there. Really nice. I can't quite discern if there is like a wash or any kind of weathering on these. I think it's just the light picking up on that sort of hammered metal finish, but we do have a wash across the top of the chest plate, sort of making it look worn and sort of almost a bit muddy, sort of dirty, grimy across this top section. The line does look a little bit harsh. It doesn't sort of fade out there, but I do quite like that sort of weathered effect up the top there. You can see those straps going around under the arms. And of course, we've also got these straps across at the top of the shoulders, kind of connecting on here. When I look at them really close, they are all one piece, which I'm really keen to test out the articulation on the arms, because that is actually connected. I thought maybe the straps would be sculpted on, we'd have a gap, and then have these shoulder plates attached to the arms so it doesn't interfere with the articulation. So I'm really keen to see how that moves. Now we've got an undershirt here, sort of a looser fit black long sleeve shirt. We've got one gauntlet on his right arm. I gotta say, this silver part here is a little bit smooth. It kind of is a little bit more sort of a standout piece. It's sort of drawing the eye because it just sort of looks almost a little bit plastic, but if that is what the original costume element looks like, then Hasbro can't really change that. But I just want to sort of rotate his wrist around because I like this hammered metal section better. I think it sort of fits with the design of his pieces there. That's going to possibly change once we get him holding his accessory, of course. On the other side, we just have this plain sleeve cuff here as well. No sort of extra accessory details there. Moving on, we've kind of got this abdomen section with horizontal lines this time, and then we've got this sort of a skirt section with sort of this wrinkled worn leather with some really nice details. And the standout element here is this really nice kind of dry brushing to sort of age up the leather. It's got a texture to it that I'm hoping is going to show up on camera. A little bit of sort of wrinkles to it. It looks really nice. You can see sort of the dry brushing, the sort of over top sort of paint effect really picking up on those detail lines there. Really nice. I like sort of the wornness. It doesn't look like a shiny, clean toy. It's those little extra added elements that sort of really give us a lot of detail. We've got that sort of creasing on the leather belt coming in here again. That's really nice to see. We do have a little bit of a sort of a metal ring here in the front, which unfortunately I don't think, I'm trying to see if I don't, it's really subtle. If I tip it to the side, I can just make out the silver paint, but when I'm looking at it straight on, it's really subtle. It's almost looking sort of like a shiny plastic to my eyes. It's looking a little bit better on camera, to be honest. There is a silver there, but it's not, it's just, it shows up better in some angles. When I turn it other sides, it just looks dark. And then when I hit the light right, I can see the silver. But we don't have any sort of silver accenting on any of the buckle, the domes there, like we don't have any here as well. I don't think they would necessarily be the same color as the straps. Maybe they are black on film. Something I always find fun when I go through and open up my Star Wars figures, it makes me want to go back and watch the film or the series episode again and really just focus on the costume details, because I'm always quite impressed with how much Hasbro does get on there. But every now and again, I'm like, is that supposed to be a color? Is this one tiny stud supposed to be silver? Maybe I need to go back and watch Return of the Jedi and see if this one stud is supposed to be silver or black, or is it really just a dark brown color? But yeah. Okay. Excuses to rewatch Star Wars aside, he's got these just sort of cream, not quite true white pants, just pretty plain. There's no real pockets or anything like that, tucked into his boots. I really like the boots on this one. Sometimes brown leather boots, they can be a bit plain. These ones have a nice sort of over top sort of almost like a Roman sandal type sort of detail over the top of the boots strapped on, and we do have some nice silver painting there for the ankle strap. I like that. I was really hoping that detail wouldn't get missed. I don't like it when something that's obviously a metal buckle is just the same color as the leather. I don't think that should be done. And I really like just the pebbled texture of this leather overlay, a nice contrast to the more flatter texture of the boot itself. You can kind of see this section here is looking a lot more sort of smoother compared to the more pebbled texture of the leather over the top. And we've got a dark gray for the soles of the boots. You can see we've got a tread there, quite nice. We do have holes on the underside for third-party stands, of course, if you want to use peg stands for your Black Series figures. Lando has exposed hands. We do have an extended trigger finger for his right hand, but this particular figure does not come with a blaster, so don't necessarily need that extended figure for a staff weapon. And we do just have a little bit more of a classic C grip, just a tiny extension on the trigger finger, but it's not separate. It's just a little bit further forward compared to the other fingers. We're definitely going to have fun at testing out the accessories very shortly, but let's test out his articulation. So let's test out. It's nice when costume details line up with articulation for figures, isn't it? So of course we've got this nice defining section here where the armor plate stops. He can swivel quite nicely at that point. And we've got just a tiny amount of sort of forward and back. It's not really going to change. He's not going to look anything different on the shelf if I tip him backwards and forwards. He doesn't really hold that position much either. It's more for sort of side-to-side motion, because unlike a lot of older figures, Hasbro doesn't really use the sort of low hip as a point of sort of cutting across the figure. It does almost look like there could be an articulation point here at the top of this leather section here, but that is solid. It might be where they've constructed the figure, because it almost looks like there is a defining line in there, maybe where they've connected two pieces, but it's not, that's not an articulation point. He doesn't move there. Something I really want to know is how well these shoulder plates are going to move when I move his arms. So let's raise his arms. Oh wow, okay. So they are quite, not completely rubbery, but flexible, because I could see those straps, that connecting strap is all one piece, and you can see that it's not fully sculpted on the, it must be, it's really black because of course his sleeves are black, but it looks like there is an attachment point at the lower edge of his shoulder plate, but it allows the arm to move, and I can get all the way up, and it just kind of bunches up. Doesn't look the best. Of course, armor is not really going to sort of bend quite like that, but it doesn't actually restrict the movement. So you do have the option of that sort of range of motion. Of course, it's going to get a little bit tricky. Let's see how well we can swivel. We're starting to distort the shape there a little bit. We're kind of twisting it over to the side, but I can raise his arm up. To be honest, I'm not sure that I want to test that any further than that particular angle, but anything sort of in the same sort of plane as the shoulders is good to me. Some characters have a lot of bulky armor, things that extend over the shoulder, that really does impact on the way that they can move their arms. So if I can get them to raise their arms up to the same level as their shoulder, I consider that a win. It does distort it a little bit, but I'm really quite impressed because these straps are all in one piece and it's still attached. I thought maybe it would start to float and not really be attached to the shoulders, that it's just sitting there, but it is attached, so it moves with the arm, but it's, yeah, that's quite cool. And of course, they don't sort of float and stick out weird when you put the arms down as well, because they're attached in place. So that's really nice. Okay, so pretty standard elbow articulation there. We can see the sculpting line quite well hidden in the drapes and folds of his loose sleeves. So let's just get his arms up, a bit stiff, but of course he's a slightly older figure by now. He's been in his packaging for a while. Sometimes they can just be a bit stiff when they're fresh out of the packet. That elbow was very tight, but we got there. There we go, can get his arms. Another thing that's quite good, particularly if it's a two-handed weapon like a staff, we want to be able to get the elbows quite in close to the body, because we want the hands to be able to sort of do a two-handed pose, which is essential for many lightsabers. But you can see I can get his hands to stack, which is perfect. I'm probably going to have his hands a little bit further apart. Lightsabers, you need to get them quite close together, but that's nice to see that I can actually get his elbows quite tight together and his hands quite close, so that's perfect. So looking at his wrists, it looks like we're going to have just that swivel. In this hand, I don't think we've got, oh, okay, yeah, we've got a side to side that I could just make out tucked in there. Is that actually going to be able to tip side to side? It's very stiff. I think the rim of his gauntlet here is blocking. You might be able to just see that articulation. It's just tucked in there. It's not really going to do anything side to side, but I can see the front and back articulation on his left hand. So, oh, very stiff. Can get it there. It's not very flexible, but I can get him to move forward, so that's useful. And of course we can rotate his hands there as well. So I'm not too much on his right hand, but I'm clearly going to be able to hold the staff, which is the main thing there. So of course, let's check out his hips. He's not really an acrobatic character so much, but we can test out the articulation style for the hips. You can see there. We do also have that sort of swivel joint with this line here at the top of the thighs, not really hiding there, but it's very tight. I can just rotate it. And something I like about this particular figure is it's kind of smooth in this area. It's not cutting through any sort of draping detail. So I can actually turn this. It's very stiff, but I'm not cutting through detail lines there. So I can actually move that without it sort of looking weird. Very tight, but I like that because we don't have a big gap. On some figures, there's a little bit of a gap at this attachment point, and it just really draws my eye because it's not really a detail line per se. It's part of the toy, not the original costume design. Now, moving on to the knees. These are the knees I don't like because you can kind of get them to bend. I find that one point of articulation wants to bend more than the other, and I find it really hard to kind of force the other one to move as well. Okay, so there we go. So now I've got both parts so they can kick all the way back. Probably not going to be needing Lando to do that pose, but you can see it starts looking a lot like a plastic toy, less like a character. We've got this really sort of rectangular shape here. Humans don't really bend like that. We tend to be a bit more like a V, so I like the modern style there. But I'm probably going to have him standing up, so at least it's disguised pretty well in the wrinkles of his pants there. I'm just not a fan of that particular style of articulation. Now, I'm already playing a lot with his boots here. He's got a lot of side-to-side ankle flexibility there, so that'll be fun to do some poses with there. That's very easy. And we do have good front and back. He's got a good grip there in the boots. They're not floppy, but I've do got a good range of motion there that's not really fighting me. I don't like fighting with my toys. I know that they need to be relatively stiff to hold their position and not sort of collapse over time, but I just don't like the risk of breaking a toy while I'm fighting for an articulation point. And even though I've been bending his legs and ankles around, he still stands up well. I like that he kind of has a really nicely defined default where he stands up well. Sometimes when I get a figure out of the packaging, I feel like it's a little bit of a mystery puzzle where I'm trying to get them to stand up straight. Some of them just really want to tip forward and backwards, and it takes a lot of work to get them to stand up balanced, especially when you start adding accessories. So speaking of accessories, let's get him kitted out with his helmet and his staff, his vibro axe there. Just really impressed with the level of paintwork and sculpting on his costume detail. Really unique. So let's test out his helmet. So of course, most of the time, if a character has anything like hair, it's going to have to be rubber to fit over the top. So of course, this is a flexible helmet accessory there, but I'm really impressed with the level of detail here. So of course, we've got the sort of quilted leather cap. We've got some studs here. Now I have to note, while I was remarking that the studs on the back of his costume weren't painted, the studs across the top of his helmet here are painted. They are not left brown. They look like a dark gunmetal grey metallic finish, which is nice. We've got that sort of cap style brim here and around the back. These studs are the same, but of course they are on metal, so that kind of fits a little bit better there. And then of course we've got this really unique kind of alien creature sort of bony section here on the front of his helmet here, and these are actually quite sharp. Even though they are cast on all of the sort of flexible rubber, it's actually quite pointed and sharp on those edges, which is really quite fun. Such fine detail, and there is a tiny bit of weathering around these as well. It looks like kind of a cream color, but then there is just a hint of a little bit of sort of yellow in around the base on both sides, just to kind of give it a little bit more of sort of a bony color that's not completely clean, not too stark white. And of course, we've got these really cool sort of hooks there as well. Really nice. It is just that base plastic color on the inside, but overall, it's just absolutely fantastic detail. Really, really nice. I love these little bony bits. Really cool. So let's hope it looks just as cool on Lando. So let's get his head straight. And I'm hoping this is going to fit on really nice. Yes. Okay. So it's not a tight fit. I can sort of take it off quite easily, but that fits down on his really nicely. It's so important to kind of have this, you know, really fitting on his face, because, you know, we want it to sort of line up. We need to be able to sort of see his eyes. It needs to look right. Very nice. I like how we can still see a reasonable amount of his face there. Really good fit. Now he looks fully like he's all dressed up in his Skiff Guard disguise. Okay, let's test out his vibro axe. I love this. It looks really, really cool. It looked neat through the packaging, and it looks just as cool out, if not more. It looks like a dark gray plastic. So this section down here looks pretty much just like a dark gray. We've got some really nice details there. But once we come up to the bladed section, it starts about here. We've got a metallic silver sort of dry brush sort of painting over the top of it. You can see the sort of the painting lines there. It's almost like a sort of a brushed metal, like it's been scratched. I like the sort of the bladed section in particular. Really nice. And we've got the sort of the power section here. Of course, it's a vibro axe. They've got a little bit of a power function in there. Really nice finish, and I love the detail on this as well. You know, of course, you want the cutouts and everything like that. There's a lot of fine detail. It even looks like a tiny, tiny screw. Hopefully that's showing up on camera. It's so small. It's like a little screw. Really fun. Kind of wish there was just a little bit more of a metallic finish down the base of it. But again, probably going to have to go back and rewatch Return of the Jedi to make sure that there is actually a bit of weathering down here. I know that sort of Skiff Guard scuffle is very fast. But I really like the detail at the top there. Fantastic. So I'm just going to take that off because he kind of wants to drop it a little bit. Let's see how easy it is going to be to get this in his hands. I'm not sure where I want him to hold it. And I get the feeling this might be one that's a little bit of a fight, because I can't sort of slide it in the top because we've got a very large, like if I go from there, of course, we've got this large section here and I can't go down from the top. And I don't want to break this weapon. So I'm just going to pop it into this hand because I feel like this classic sort of staff grip, that one's going to be much easier to get into his hand. So of course we can get it in his hand like that. But I really want him to hold it in a two-handed grip. So I'm going to try and get this past his fingers. So these fingers are a lot tighter than I was expecting. Might take a moment to get this in it because I know I can do it, but I'm just going to have to take my time to be very careful to sort of make sure that I'm not going to break anything with his fingers. So as you can see, I've got Lando holding the vibro axe in both hands. I ended up going the other way than my first attempt. His hands are very tight straight out of the box. You can sort of pry his fingers open and get the staff in there just before they kind of close back into position, because the staff itself has a bit of flex to it. You can see I can kind of flex it there, so you can't sort of force it through his hands because you're just going to bend the vibro axe, and I really don't want to break it. But it looks really cool, and you can really see that metallic finish there on the bladed end there. Looks really cool. And he, of course, he's standing just as well as he was before. Now that I've got his accessories, this one's not heavy enough to really play with his center of gravity. I wasn't too worried about that, but you never know. He looks really cool. Of course, I kind of wish that we had, you know, a little bit more world building in the Black Series 6-inch scale like we do with the iconic 3.75-inch figures. We don't really have all of sort of the Jabba's Palace aliens and characters and skiff guards and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not really ever going to be able to do the katana and the skiffs with all of the characters on it, but I'm hoping to sort of really build out my Black Series collection of Return of the Jedi characters, so at least I can sort of put him there, you know, with Princess Leia disguised as Boushh and Luke and all of those sort of iconic characters there. I really like the paint effects on this one. I love the metallic finish. It just looks really cool, and of course he looks just fantastic now that he's finally got his accessories on him. That's one of the fun parts about getting a figure out of the packaging, is you really get to sort of put everything together rather than having their accessories just sort of forever packaged beside them. I do love keeping some of my figures carded, don't get me wrong, but you know, something I'm really enjoying with unboxing figures that I've had stored away for quite a while is just really finally sort of seeing them all together so that I can add them to an ensemble display of lots of figures in fun poses. So that's my resolution for this year, is really try and open up more figures rather than stashing them away when I get them home from the stores. So this was a fun one to start off with. I've got lots more Black Series and archive figures, and as well as vintage collection 3.75 as well. So I'm going to be having a lot of fun opening up a lot of figures in the days and weeks and probably months to come. So I hope you join me for some fun Star Wars unboxings. This guy looks really cool. Definitely need to add more to my Return of the Jedi collection in the 6-inch scale. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars Black Series figure and had a lot of fun checking out the fantastic details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again really soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I recently opened up the Luke Skywalker Imperial Light Cruiser figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.